Hey everybody, how's it going? So, I haven't uploaded on here in a few years. For those of you that know me, I'm a car guy. As you can tell, I'm sitting in a car right now. I want to talk a little bit about what I recently purchased. So, a little bit of backstory. I was on eBay, and I had been in on a Ford Crown Victoria, one of my favorite cars. I ended up losing it. The auction went way higher than it should. Those cars just are not worth what they're selling for, just simply because they're a fleet car. And 9 times out of 10, they are on their second, third, fourth, fifth life. I mean, they've been passed from department to department sometimes, and then they get passed from private citizen to private citizen to the point that they're not worth what they're selling for. In this case, I lost that. I was looking at the other Crown Victorias and the other Ford Panther platform cars, the Lincoln Town Car, the Mercury Grand Marquis, and I was like, they're all selling for ridiculous prices. Last year, I had bought a 2004 Pontiac Grand Prix GTP. Now, I absolutely love Pontiacs. I love Oldsmobiles. I love Buicks, cars like that. In my sense, I typically like 80s and 90s front-wheel drive GM cars that a lot of people just don't desire, they don't collect. So, I'm on eBay. I come across this 95 Pontiac Grand Prix, as well as another Grand Prix two-door. It was a newer model. I don't remember the exact year on it, but I bid on the two-door, lost it at the last minute, so I bid on this 95 Pontiac. The idea behind this car is to restore it, bring it back to its original look. So I throw some bid on it, thinking I'm just not going to win this car. And I end up winning it. I end up paying a little bit over $600 for this car. When I got it, I was excited. I had to drive from where I live here in Oklahoma all the way up to a little place called Sidney, Nebraska. For those of you that don't know where that's at, that is north of the Colorado border in western Nebraska, to pick this thing up. On my way up there, I'm thinking this car's probably going to have rust. It's going to have this, because, Nebraska's kind of a rust belt state. And I got there, and I was amazed to find this car has no rust on the body, has minimal rust underneath, very minimal. There's no rot anywhere underneath this car. And it surprised me, because this is a 25-year-old car. It's got 174,000 miles on it. I figured it's going to be rusted up. But it had some other things with the body. And I will feature that on my Instagram. I'll link that below. So, when I picked this car up, brought it home, it had a bunch of stuff on the body. A gentleman and his son got a hold of this car, and it was kind of a father-son art project boredom thing. This car has spray paint everywhere. This car had things mounted to the body that shouldn't have been mounted to the body. I was like, I can do this. I can fix this car back up. Mechanically, this car runs solid. It does have a cooling issue up front. That's a very typical problem with these cars. It's a 3.1 liter V6, and it surprisingly runs very well. It does need its little tune-up and love and all that. This car has some rear suspension issues. I think a strut or a shock or something's gone bad in the rear end. So the rear end sits a little bit lower than it should. But I'll address that as I get to it. Interior is actually pretty clean. It needs a really good cleaning. The dashboard has a couple of cracks in it here and there. The air conditioner controls is missing a knob. The radio, the screen doesn't work on it. The volume button does its own thing. It's missing some of its adjustment, or one of its adjustment buttons, I should say. But otherwise, everything on this car works, including the front light bar, which is an unusual thing for me because most of these cars, and even in the Fords that I've seen with it, the Ford Taurus and the Mercury, I believe Sable, that had the light bar across the front, they typically don't work. Or one bulb in them works, or they're cracked, or they're missing lenses. This car doesn't have that issue. This car is not the prettiest. Was originally called, I believe the color was Bright Aqua Metallic. And you can still see some of the original paint in the door jambs, under the hood, in the trunk. In some spots on the body that did not get covered with spray paint. I'm going to work on trying to take that off. I would be filming this video outside, but it is raining right now. Oklahoma weather, you got to love it. But my goal is to try to bring this car back to its original state. And I will talk a little bit more off and on about why I picked this car. Mostly I picked it because I love a challenge. And this car is going to present a challenge. The shocking fact is, as I've said earlier, it actually runs and drives. Everything about this car is just, to me, unique. Now, there were two different body styles of the Grand Prix during that time. There was the SE four-door sedan, which looked like a traditional family car. And then there were the GT two-doors. There were a couple different variants of the two-door Pontiacs that had a slightly different style. They were featured as Richard Petty's car. Richard Petty special editions of the Pontiac were out at that time. But pretty much I will showcase this car. I may go ahead and start it up here in a minute and just kind of let y'all see it a little bit. Ignore all the junk in the back seat. Some of that is stuff that was either in the car or stuff that I took off the car before I drove the 700 plus mile trip, because a lot of it was not secured, like, at all. Like, there's those red and blue hoses. Those were on the car. Those made absolutely zero sense, and I will showcase what this car looked like when I picked it up. A lot of you are going to laugh because I bought this car, but it was something that I felt like, you know what, I want to take on the challenge. I absolutely love this car. I intend on keeping this car for a while. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and start it up and show y'all how it runs. I will actually showcase how it runs in, I guess, the next video, because I cannot figure out how to flip this screen around. Stay tuned.